Good morning, hello, and welcome everybody. It's that time of the week. It's time for the breakfast show with myself, David Bell, and as always, Mr. Nick Luby. Christmas is looming. It's only round the corner. It feels a little bit like Christmas, hence the jumper is on this morning. The snow for me is on the ground outside. I went for a walk this morning, -7 out there. It was chilly, but what a fabulous morning it is. Nick, live from Chelmsford. What's the weather like there? Have you still got snow on the ground? Is it still frosty outside? Does it feel like Christmas?
It's frosty. Absolutely, mate. I've still got snow on the roof of my car. It's been there all week. I'm sure it'll come off in one big whoosh as I'm driving along. It's hardly got above 0 all week, mate. If I've scraped my car once, I've scraped it more than once. It's persistent. That's for sure. I tell you what I did notice. Right, so the gritters had been out. The roads were clear. Okay, and apart from the start of your journey up the street, when you get to a main roads are clear. Footpaths, nightmare. Right, no one grits the footpaths, covered in ice. Treacherous. And you know who uses the footpaths? Kids, mums, parents, old people. Right, uses the roads. Big fellas in 4x4 blooming 4-wheel drive cars. We should have a policy of gritting the paths as well as the roads. Right, not fair. But yeah, all good here in Chelmsford. But the heating's been on all week. Don't turn.
Let's get the signatures started. We'll start up a petition to get the footpaths gritted. It's the same around here. When I went out for a walk, 45-50 minute walk this morning with the mad Springer Spaniel, it's icy out there. I mean, at parts I was skiing behind him. He likes to have a bit of a pool and a run in the morning. So yeah, it's quite treacherous out there. But I will say, I went out the other morning and I don't live too far from a school, and I come around the corner. People drive far too fast. I'm a competent driver in the snow and ice. I've driven lots in snow and ice abroad as well as here in the UK, but lots abroad. And, I know that it doesn't matter what speed you're going at, your car keeps going. Cars here are not also designed to go in the snow. We don't have winter tyres on, all that type of stuff. The mums and dads, I won't just pick on the mums, but dropping the children off at school, coming around the corner like they are Nigel Mansell or Lewis Hamilton, as it would be this day, thinking, God, you're going to... The amount of people I saw hit the curbs because they couldn't stop and the car just slid into the curb. And I'm like, slow down. There's children. There's people. It's a disaster out there. But anyway, there's my rant for this morning. Please slow down, certainly on housing estates where the roads haven't been gritted. And actually, they are like ice rinks at the moment. They're terrible. They're awful. Lucky we're not in Scotland, though. It's even colder up there. If you are in Scotland, morning to you. Maybe joining us from Finland or Sweden or something like that. And you're saying, it's not cold. It's like tropical where you are at the moment. But anyway.
Must be parts of the world, lots of them, that there's a sprinkling of snow in the UK. Everything grinds to a halt. It's chaos. They must just laugh, thinking, oh, look, the UK have got an inch of snow. Let's go out a normal day. We've got 5 foot out there. No problem.
We shut airports. M25 come to a standstill, all for a bit of a dusting. A bit of icing sugar dropped out the sky. But it does lead quite neatly, really, talking about these roads being, or the footpaths being very slippery and icy, and it's mums and children's and older generation people moving around, and you have a slip and a fall, you hurt yourself. Maybe possibly damage, break an arm or a leg or something like that, but you need to seek medical advice. So we would go off to the hospital, A&E. But today is the start of a 12-hour NHS strike, which is impacting a number of hospitals around the UK. Nick, high horse, what's your opinion on this? I know you're close to the NHS and stuff like that. You've worked or provided support into them as well, but what's your feeling on this? What's your beliefs? Strike, no strike, good job, bad job?
It's a real shame, I think, when any organisation, any group of workers have to go on strike or feel they need to go on strike or get to that point where strike is the only option. And chances are nurses feel bad about it because they're in a caring profession. Some probably feel worse than others, dependent upon what job you do. But a real shame. But if that's the last port of call, right? Something has to give. That seems to be strike action. Massively inconvenient, and inconvenient to the people that can't fix that problem. Right, the people that can fix that problem are government, or management, or whoever holds the purse strings. Poor old patients can't fix that problem. It's like the train drivers, right? Us commuters, we can't fix the problem for you, but we are massively inconvenienced. So I feel sorry for the nurses. Pay them more by all means. What a job. They do an amazing job. Please pay them more money, because they've gone for years without any pay increases or below inflation pay increases. So pay them more money. All right. Forget the bankers' bonuses. Give the blooming money to the nurses. Right. What I don't like about the UK is the massive difference in levels of pay dependent upon what you do, from professional footballers all the way down to community carers. Right. I don't know whose job's more difficult, right? If you're a footballer or if you've got to go into an old person's home and do personal care, right? I know which one I would rather do and which one I wouldn't want to do. But the level of difference in pay between those two things is ridiculous. I would like to be a bit fairer around the place.
Yeah. I totally agree. I 100% agree. They should be rewarded for the work, the hours they do, what they do for us in a community. I'm just not a great believer in strikes. I just think that's very old-fashioned. There's other ways and better ways now of raising awareness and making things happen. And I'm 100% behind them. It's a train strike, from a train strike, if they need more money, great, but don't go and strike and cause chaos. Let's come to a way of working through this. And I know someone's going to challenge me on this and say, well, David, they've tried this. They've tried to sit down and have, humanized talks and communicate, and nothing's come from it. This is why the strikes are happening. But personally, I think striking should be banned. That's just an opinion from my side of things. I know lots of people won't agree with me, but I do think look at the chaos it's causing. Everybody seems to be on strike. From your post office to your trains to your NHS, the lawyers, solicitors, junior solicitors, whatever they are, everyone just seems to be striking. Don't get what you want, throw my toys out the pram, and hopefully we'll get what we want. And I reckon
I think you may have oversimplified it, but let's the audience be the judges of that.
I know I probably have oversimplified it. And to answer your question,
the chat's gone wild. Boo to David Bell. Boo. Actually,
I won't tell you what's in the chat.
I think for the first time ever, right, we've been doing this show, it's approaching 2 years. For the first time ever, I think we may have been spammed on YouTube.
Yeah. If you're on YouTube and you want to go for a date, there's a link on there for dating for all tastes and ages. I won't actually put that one up on display on the screen, but if you're on YouTube, you better see it there for yourself. We'll get those deleted at some point. Sorry to let you down if you're watching it on YouTube.
How strange. How strange. If you've ever watched this show, it's not the place to come for sexy dating. That's for sure.
Not on a Thursday morning business breakfast show, but they are running a business, obviously. So you're welcome to enjoy the show and tell us a bit more. That business
needs some first aid applied to it, because that's marketing gone way wrong. So we got two approaches to the show, right? Business first aid, which is, we're going to talk about that. And then real life first aid, and how do we save a life? So our magical guest is going to come on. He's going to fascinate us and also provide us with some tools to potentially save a life. How cool would that be if one of our lovely audience comes back before Christmas and says, watched your show, you never guess, ended up saving a life? Brilliant. But let's first of all talk about business first aid. Right? We've talked a lot over the year about business. How's it going? What can we do to help? We've had hundreds of guests who are happy to provide knowledge, experience, to try and assist everyone take their business further and onwards. But when it comes to the point of first aid, I'll be really interested, lovely audience, if you could fix one thing in your business, what would that one thing be? Is there, you come to the end of the year, if you think, if it was only just this, if I could just sort this out. It could be supply problems, it could be cost, it could be more sales, it could be staffing, also all those things. I'll be very interested. What's that one thing that you'd love to be able to fix?
Yeah, great question, because quite often when running a business, it has its challenges, and we're all face similar challenges throughout the life cycle of our business. And the lots of things you just mentioned there, Nick, sales, finances, the right people within the organization. Every business has these challenges it faces. And first aid to me is not something that you can be proactive about. I mean, there's probably things that you can put into place, health and safety, to safeguard and stuff like that. But first aid is kind of reactive. Something happens and you have to respond, that first responder. And we should be first responders in our business as well. So we see something that's happening and we need to respond and fix it. If it's a broken bone, we fix that broken bone. If someone's having a heart attack, we, apply CPR. We get that business back up and running. So what thing, as you're saying, Nick, what thing could we identify in our business now, coming towards the end of 2022, could we look at and find a fix for? And when I say a fix, something that's not just papering over the cracks, or in this case, putting a plaster over the wound, something that's actually going to fix it and make it 100% fixed, and you can move forward in 2023 knowing that problem, that challenge has now been resolved. So it'll be interesting what people think.
I think it's one of those things. If you can recognize it, you think there's something that's not working quite well, and recognize it early enough, you can do something about it. If you leave it and it lingers, then chances are it's going to get worse and it's going to cause a problem. As a runner, okay, we should be pretty good at recognizing an issue before it becomes a big issue, right? Before it becomes something that stops you running. And we should be more mindful about, actually, I've got a bit of an issue, I need to rest up. We're us runners, we're pretty bad at that. But we should be able to recognize it. And all entrepreneurs, all business owners out there should be able to recognize something's not quite right. And maybe it's time you sit down with your team and say, right, what is this? What I'm seeing, and I'd love to hear from the audience. The three big issues this year seem to be around culture, because we're not getting together as much as we used to. Innovation, we've not got that tap me on the shoulder, ask me a question kind of availability that we used to have. And staff retention, bit of a nightmare. If someone offers you a better job, you can work from home just as much or even more. Why would I hang around? Because you're no longer bonded with the team. So those three things, I imagine, will require some serious first aid if you recognize them as issues.
Yeah, working from home is an interesting one. I was out yesterday with a number of small business owners, and lots of them were saying, I want to get out for working from home. It's costing me a fortune to heat my house because I'm there all day now. I know people have also stayed at home because of the weather and the roads and, the tricky conditions out there. But I think people have gone, God, I'm going to get out. I'm going to go and, find myself a base in a coffee shop or somewhere else. But there you go. Look, we've had that comment back, Nick. There it is. Innovation, collaboration, and culture. The words are mirrored perfectly there. But for me, it's identifying these challenges. And I think we are in a challenging time. We spoke earlier, Nick, we perceive Bank of England are going to raise interest rates again today. What impact will that have? They're suggesting 0.5%. So up to that 0.5%, 0.25% is going to be raised on interest rates. Recession still looms. So it's dark times as well. The energy crisis, all these things come together. But we need to understand the challenges that we've got, but how can we fix them? And every business will have its own challenges. And I'm really intrigued to know what challenges people are having and seeing out there. As a consultant, one of the things that I see when I helicopter into a business and kind of come in with a very open mind, don't know the business. I might know of them, but don't really know how they operate, what they do in the detail. When I can sit back and then look at all the operations and see certain things done in a certain way, they don't see that because they're in the business. They're very kind of blinkered-eyed, looking in one direction. I see it in a 360-degree view. And then I ask these questions, why do you do that? What's the common answer, Nick? If I say, well, why do you do it like that? What do you think the most common answer I get?
That's the way we've always done it, David.
Yes, that's exactly what they say. I've always done it like that. It's the most common answer. But then we say, well, why do you do it like that? Why have you thought about doing this? Oh, that's a good idea. And it's staring them in the face. It's really obvious, but sometimes it just needs someone to point it out. So yeah, share away, everybody. Tell us what challenges you've got, and we'll see if someone else can fix it for you live here on the show.
Sometimes you just need another pair of eyes. Right? Good morning to the lovely Corolla Becca. If any businesses out there, right, want to get out of the business for a short while, Corolla and team provide amazing business retreats. Right? What a great opportunity to get out of the business, go somewhere else, mix with different people, think about the business, think about well-being, nutrition, amazing stuff. I think some of us quite often we're too in the business, as you say, mate. You need that helicopter kind of view, someone else to say, yeah, but what about this? Well, I can't see the wood for the trees, you know. I'm doing it, and then sometimes you just need to take a step back, and then you see things a bit clearer.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll bring our guest who's been waiting patiently backstage in the green room. We'll bring him on. We'll ask him about his opinion on the NHS. We're asking what he gets up to and what he does, and we're going to find out how to save a life. We're back straight after this. Well, good morning. If you're just joining us, you're munching away on your crunchy nut cornflakes. Other brands do exist, of course. Maybe you're eating your toast, drinking your coffee, having a cup of tea. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. Myself, David Bell, and Mr. Nick Luby. We're talking about business first aid this morning and real life first aid as well. And we're going to bring on our first guest who's been waiting very patiently, find out a little bit more about them, what they do, and how we can help and save your business. Please welcome live on the show for the first time. It's his debut here, Mr. David Hewitt from Saxon or East Saxon Training. Good morning, David.
Good morning. Morning. You're looking very festive there, David, in your Christmas jumper.
I'm making the effort. It's a bit early, I know, but you know, I'm getting into the spirit early.
Fantastic. Well done.
Unlike Mr. Luby the Grinch, he's promised me he's going to make a festive turnout next week. You know,
Christmas show next week. Don't worry about this grinchiness. Christmas show next week. I'll see what I can find. I might find a bauble or something to bring.
Yeah, no, you're looking good.
So David, met you a couple of times now, live, face to face. Great to do that, but also met you originally virtually online,
Yes.
not long after you launched your business back in March 2020, the beginning of the pandemic. If everyone, well,
Yes.
I think everyone can recall that. I suppose to kind of paint the picture, tell us a little bit about yourself, David, and tell us a little bit about East Saxon Training, what it is you actually do.
So, training, as the title gives away, I'm a bit of a fan of history. So I picked East Saxon as the name because I live in Essex, and that's where the word Essex comes from, the old East Saxon kingdom. And I did a lot of teaching and training during my career as a sort of manager, mainly in the health service. And I just loved doing teaching and training. Also did a lot in the voluntary sector through the Scout Association and other charities. And you sort of reach a point in your life when you think life's too short. I want to do something I really enjoy every day, and I want to get out of bed and think, yeah, I'm going to work. And I really do enjoy doing training. So I do a mixture of training. And the health service is very heavily regulated. So I do sort of mandatory training that everybody has to have, things like health and safety and, as you say, first aid and fire safety and data protection and all those sorts of things. We're very heavily regulated, but also some more management-based training based on my experience of management. Management in the NHS is extremely difficult, and I think I've learned a few things over the years. I had to deal with most sorts of situations, redundancies, sackings, recruitments, highs and lows. So I run some management training to share that experience with people as well. And so far, so good. I've had lots of support, thankfully.
Masses of experience, which we will dig into. First of all, David, I want to find what we're going to do about the NHS. All right, you've spent 20 years working in a senior position in the NHS. You've probably seen it, right? Like no one else has seen it. What are we going to do to fix it? How can we fix it?
Fix it is the right word, Nick. The system is broken. I mean, the nurses strike today, putting aside what they want for money and things like that. The only reason they're on strike is because they don't enjoy going to work anymore because the system's broke, and it's not a normal job. If you turn up in a restaurant to run a restaurant one day and you're a bit short-staffed, it doesn't matter, does it? It's not the end of the day. You have a difficult, stressful day, but you carry on. If you turn up to run a ward with 45 people in and you're short-staffed and you're a junior, newly qualified nurse and you're suddenly put in charge of literally, other people's loved ones' life and death, that is not a fun day at work, and that's not a situation we should be putting people in. I think there's 100,000 vacancies if you include social services across the health service in the UK. You can't keep turning up to work and being short-staffed and having under-trained staff and underqualified staff and no staff at all. And what do the government do about it? Constant reorganisations, every single political party. So, Tony Blair's lot did it during the coalition. The Liberal Democrats joined in, and the Tory party back now. All they do is top-down reorganisations, and we don't need any more of that. We just need a bit of status quo, a real proper recruitment programme, make it an interesting, enjoyable job again. And the public have got to meet the NHS halfway as well. We abuse the NHS horribly, in all sorts of ways. We're not very good at looking after our own health as a nation. 2/3 of adults in this country are overweight or obese. We know that leads to all long-term health complications. There's lots more we can do to look after ourselves. And we need to be kinder and fairer and, more supportive of the NHS and the job they do when we're actually there. We all went out and clapped them during COVID. But, when we turn up and it's an appointment and it's been delayed, we forget all that, don't we? And we're rude and angry and abusive to them. And that, nobody wants to work in that situation. So the system's broken, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, actually. Wise words there. It's the biggest employer in the country, the NHS. There's 100,000 vacancies. That's, I didn't know it was, that many.
Yeah, if you include social services as well.
But it's all part of it, isn't it?
It's all one system. That's the issue. And I think part of the NHS problem is that it's too big. I worked for the NHS and then I went to the private sector, and the biggest difference is scale. So in the smaller private hospital, you could know all the staff by names and you could really have that sort of family spirit. In the NHS, where you go to the smaller hospitals, you still have that a little bit, but where you have the really big hospitals, nobody knows anybody and it becomes very impersonal. And that's not a nice place to work either. So
you become a number. You just become a number in a business, and you're one or 501 or 50,001. And as you say, that's not a nice place. And who wants to go to work and not be known as an individual, as a person, not respected for the hard work they put in? So you're right. It's not all about the money then. The money is just probably, of course they want more money. Cost of living's gone up. Inflation's, spiraling out of control. So everybody wants something a little more, but it's probably not all about the money. Subjective, isn't it?
I don't think it is. I suspect that if nurses really loved their job, they wouldn't be out on strike today. When the system's been so stressed for so long, if you talk to the union leaders, they do talk about these other issues as well. But everybody just sort of focuses on the money. But difficult job. Not everybody in the NHS is perfect. We tend to think that all doctors are gods and all nurses are angels, but it's not like that. They're like any organisation. There's good and bad people, and they need sort of good management in there to control it. There are things you can do to make it more efficient. Certainly, I found in the private sector, we had NHS contracts. We were paid exactly the same amount of money as NHS hospitals for running those services, and yet somehow in the private sector we can make a profit on them. In the NHS, they were saying they were loss-making services. So there still are efficiencies in there, but to be fair, we didn't have to run an A&E department. We didn't have to run the massive wards filled with older people with, all those sorts of complications. The elective surgery bit the private sector does is the easy bit, if I'm honest, and the NHS is left with all the difficult stuff to sort out. And we don't invest enough in that.
This is probably the wisest words, right, you'll hear on the subject anywhere, across the country. If you've picked up a newspaper this morning, put that down. Listen to David. He's speaking more sense than I know what to do with. I was hoping you'd have a decent answer, David, to the how do we fix it question. I didn't know you were going to nail it. That's awesome. And Carola's back. She loves the sound of looking after ourselves. What great place to start. Right? If we took more care of ourselves, we could hopefully de-stress that horrendous environment. 100,000 vacancies. Imagine that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how many people the NHS employ as a whole, but 100,000 is probably a reasonable percentage.
Yeah, it's a shocking vacancy number, and of course you sort of do your best you can when you turn up as a manager and you're trying to run that ward and you're short staffed. What do? You can't send the patient home. It's not like I say, if you turn up in a restaurant and you're short staffed, you just say, well, we'll close a couple of tables today because that's all we can do. You're absolutely stuck. And as a manager in the NHS, you're not in charge of how many people you see, how much money you get for seeing them, or even the quality standards that you treat them by, because they're all set by different bodies. So if you're a manager and you're not in charge of time, cost, or quality, what are you in charge of? You're just rearranging the chairs on the Titanic, aren't you? So it's a hugely frustrating job.
But being short-staffed, to me, it's like you've got a couple of vacancies in your business. We're talking typically here to SME type style businesses. I'm sure we've got some other bigger organisations tuning in as well. But you've got 1 or 2 vacancies to fill. 100,000. I mean, that's a challenge in itself. And then you mix in, of course, everyone has annual leave and time off. And I wouldn't want to be the person that plans the rotas either. That must be a challenge in itself.
No.
Let's talk a little bit more about you, David, and then we are going to talk a little bit more about kind of first aid stuff, which is an area that you are an expert in. You train first aid, amongst other things, which we'll touch on as well. But you're an Essex boy. You're born and bred. Welcome to Essex. Myself too. Born and bred in Essex. But you was a scout leader for 25 years. You volunteer for the Essex Search and Rescue Team. You volunteer as a first responder for the ambulance service. You support local charities. Plus, you're married with 3 children grown up. Wow. How do you fit it all in and run a business?
Well, life's not rehearsal, is it? I've, you only get one crack at it, and I haven't done all those things at the same time. To be fair, I did the Scouts for many years. Scouts was fantastic for me. I had some really great opportunities when I was younger. I went out to Nepal in 1988, met Sir Edmund Hillary, worked for the Himalayan Trust with a big national scout expedition. Really changed my life at that age. It's sort of one of those sort of things that opens your eyes up to other parts of the world. So I wanted to become a scout leader after that. Loved working with the young people, doing teaching and training with them, but also it's good fun. I had some really good friends who were my leaders that we worked with, and it's something completely different from work. So really got a lot out of it. After my children became leaders, so I thought it's time for me to do something else now and hand it over to the next generation. So I stopped and looked for other charities to work for, and that's when I got involved in the Essex Search and Rescue, which sort of supports Essex Police, going out to look for people when they're lost. I don't do that anymore. I did that for a year or a couple of years. I think really good team of guys there, still going strong. Still meet up with some of them occasionally. So if you've got a loved one out missing, they will go out and help. All volunteers, all unpaid, go out and help Essex Police search for people. Unfortunately, my wife's not really worked very well, so it was quite difficult to do those sort of on-call things. But similarly, I was worked for the ambulance service again, similar sort of time, where as a volunteer, if you call for an ambulance, and if they're a long way away, they will call for first responder volunteers. And if it was close to me where I live in Essex, then I could get there quicker on the ambulance service. And as we'll talk about later with first aid, if you can get there quickly with an AED, you can make a big difference to save somebody's life. So that was great. And then I became a bit interested in the plight of the homeless. So I did a bit of work with the homeless charities in Culture, Emmaus. I don't know if you know Emmaus, the homeless charity in Culture, do amazing work. Give them a bit of support. I do some training and things with them.
And that's the one Will Quince, the MP, is also supported, I believe, isn't it? That particular charity where he's gone and slept rough on the street overnight to raise money for the charity, I believe.
Was that Emmaus? It might have been. Yeah, they do get some good support. Yeah, there's a few different homeless charities out there. Emmaus is quite good. What they do is they run the charity shops in Colchester and elsewhere, and they provide accommodation for the homeless people in return for them sort of working in the shops. So it gives them sort of a stepping stone to move them on from being homeless to getting a job and getting some experience. That's what I like about it. It's really practical help, moves people on rather than just giving them money and helping them in a tent and a sleeping bag to help stay on the street. It really moves them on. So it's a really powerful charity. Yeah.
What a busy fella you are, David. There'll probably be people listening, right, thinking, well, I thought I was busy. I thought I was doing some good work, but now I'm listening to David. I've been shamed, right? You've got your fingers in so many laudable pies. It's awesome. And you started that conversation with something massively resonates with me, and hopefully all the business owners watching, that life's not a rehearsal. Right? And we've gone through 2 years of change, and I think businesses are slow to get back into, this is it. You only get one go at this. All right, I think we might still be stuck in a bit of rehearsal mode. And I guess if your business requires a bit of first aid, it might be because that transition from 2 years of upset and change to what the world might look like now is taking a bit of getting used to. So you started your business during the pandemic.
Yes. So
that's a dark idea, right?
It was.
Had loads of people doing the same thing. Crazy idea, surely.
Great. Yeah, exactly. So I had a full-time job, and I knew it wasn't quite that time. When I get bored, I change jobs basically. Either if I stay in the same organization, do a different role, or I change organizations. Again, part of my philosophy, life's not rehearsed. I think it's life's too short to stay in a job you're not enjoying. So I was working for a charity, which was a good charity I quite enjoyed for sort of a year out after I left the health service. Realized it wasn't quite right for me, and I wasn't quite sure what to do next. And then I delivered some training in the charity that I was working for as their sort of manager. I was running the charity, and I realized that the guys really loved it, and some of the guys we didn't necessarily hit it off, but they really liked the training I did. So I thought, actually, and they gave me some really good feedback, and it reminded me, kind of boosted my confidence. Actually, I do really enjoy this, and I am good at it. And I thought, it's now or never. I'm going to do it. I've been a senior manager for a while, so financially secure enough to take a risk. So I just handed my notice in. And then, of course, by the time I'd worked my 3 months notice, January, February, March, what happened in March 2020? COVID turned up. So it was but I was quite lucky. Early on, I got a job with Guy's and Tommy's Hospital in London, opposite the Houses of Parliament, training people to be COVID vaccinators, working for a London training firm. And that was fascinating. We had all sorts of people volunteering to be COVID vaccinators. So they were like baggage handlers at Heathrow the day before, or EasyJet pilots, or from the London shows, because you remember everybody was furloughed, nobody could work. So I actually trained over 1,000 people how to stick a needle in somebody's arm. And I know COVID was a difficult time, but it was actually quite a nice atmosphere there, training people to do it. So if your vaccination hurt, I'm sorry about that. I did the best I could. But they were a baggage handler the day before, to be fair. So it was quite a strange role for them. But so that's good. And then I did more of the mandatory training. I wanted to do more management training. That's what I thought I was going to do when I first set up. I'm a big believer in that we don't have the quality of the management in the UK isn't good enough. I don't think we promote people for the wrong reasons. I'm sure you've heard of the Peter principle from Peter Townsend, the management guru, ages ago, which is this idea that people get promoted to their level of incompetence. So you get somebody who's like a really good pupil in a classroom. So we say, no, we'll make you a teacher, but you need a totally different set of skills to be a teacher than you do to be a pupil. And then we take a really good teacher and we make them a headmaster, but you need a totally different set of skills to be a headmaster. You need to be a teacher. And the same's true in nursing. We take nurses and make them ward managers, or ward managers and make them directors. And you need different skills. And we don't train people. We just throw them into a team leader type role, and we don't give them any support and any training, and then we wonder why they mess it up. So I'm a big believer in trying to really support managers and team leaders by giving them training and support. You were talking about business first aid earlier on. I really don't think we invest enough in management training. We're quick to moan about managers, but if you don't give them any training and support, you don't learn about it at school. You don't learn about it at college or university. Management is a skill like any other skill that people can learn. And we need to, if business is short of money, often the first thing that gets slashed is the training budget. And I think that's not really short-sighted. If you want your business to survive, you need good quality people with the right skills to do it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with all of that. I've got a little top tip to throw in here, which kind of links quite neatly into first aid and management training. I'm not a big TV watcher. I've watched a little bit here and there, but what's a really good box set, and you might have come across this, David, it's called New Amsterdam, and it's an Americanized kind of box set. Recommend it if you're a business owner, if you've got someone that's going to watch it with you. There's a few tear-jerking moments as well, but it's about a director that runs the New Amsterdam Hospital in New York, but it's his management style. You only got to watch the first episode or two to kind of see how that management style is very different. And I say it's fictional, but there's some really good things you can take away from it. So if you've got a couple of hours spare at some point, tune into New Amsterdam. I think you'll find it might be on Netflix or Prime or something like that. But it's just a management style. It's very different, and it's about how we can do better and how can I help and what do you need. And he makes magic happen, really. So it's a kind of a bit of a fairy tale ending in a way. But there you go. So if you want something to watch at the weekend, New Amsterdam, see if you can find that and have a look at that.
Thanks, Dave. I'll make it.
Yeah, that wasn't just for you, by the way. That was for everybody listening, wherever they are. But yeah, great program. Let's talk about first aid. One of the main areas that you do get provide training in is first aid. And a couple of weeks ago, as I said, I invited you in wearing my FSB hat to do some first aid training, very basic first aid training in the room to, I think we had about 20 plus small business owners there, and only a very small number. And I when I say small number, probably 3 put their hand up to say they had some basic training. They knew how to save a life. And that was quite shocking for me because, as you said earlier, and I'll let you kind of pick up from here really, but if you get there quick, the quicker you get there, the more chance you've got of saving someone's life. But if someone's turning up and they don't know what to do, then they're not going to be able to provide that care that's required. So I think everyone needs basic first aid training. I think it should be something we are taught at school, and it can just be that real basic stuff: CPR, cuts, bleeds, choking, and stuff like that. But I know you're going to give us some top tips to take away for today, things that we can kind of learn over Zoom, equivalent over the show here. Let's talk us through some of the things that, as individuals, that basic first aid training we should know. Not necessarily as business owners, it's just as important, but as people, as individuals, the care for the community.
Yeah. So as a first aider, they talk about a golden hour that you have that you can make a big difference to save somebody's life or increase the chances of them surviving. If you saw the report that came out after a few weeks ago after the Manchester Arena bombing at the Ariana Grande concert, they completely agreed with you, David. One of the recommendations was, there was, as always with the reports, there was 149 recommendations. There was a lot of them, but one of them was more members of the public should have first aid training. Interestingly, also said more members of the police force and the fire service should have first aid training. And you mean the police and the fire don't all have first aid training? That was, I'm not quite sure. That's a bit of a worry, isn't it, really? But because there was a golden hour there where, there's only one person to blame for those deaths, and that's the terrorists, clearly. But more first aid might have saved more people's lives. We'll never be certain. And let's say some basic things you can do. If somebody's collapsed, we talk about the ABC of first aid, and the A stands for airway. So making sure somebody's airway is open. If somebody's lying on their back and they're unconscious, they're going to vomit, and that vomit's going to go back into their lungs, and that is nearly always fatal. If you don't choke to death immediately on that vomit, you die a couple of weeks later of a lung infection, talking to my colleagues in critical care. So we don't want people lying on their back who are unconscious. We want to roll them into the recovery position, which is basically putting somebody onto their side, staying with them and making sure if they vomit while they're unconscious, it comes out of their mouth and doesn't. Sorry, it's not a very nice breakfast topic, is it? But
well, it's an important one, though. It's an
important one. Keeping somebody's airway open, really simple things people can do that saves people's life. The second thing is catastrophic bleeding. If somebody's got major bleeding, and again, hopefully nobody's too squeamish, but we're talking the sort of the bright red blood that spurts out of people you see in the cartoons, almost arterial bleeding we talk about, that's fatal within a few minutes normally. So you've got to apply pressure, pack that wound and stop that bleeding. Again, looking at the Manchester bombing, a number of people definitely died sadly in that first hour of catastrophic bleeding. So there's lots of things you can do. You can put a tourniquet on, and there's some really simple tourniquet kits you can buy now. If you just go on to, have a look on the website, or if anybody wants to contact me after the show, they come with instructions. They're ever so easy to use. Anybody can put a tourniquet on. We're only talking the catastrophic bleeding. Not every cut and bleed. There's a time and a place for a tourniquet, but if somebody's really bleeding badly, you've got to stop that bleeding. There's no point doing CPR on somebody that's bleeding heavily because they're going, it's not going to do any good. And then, yes, the classic CPR that everybody knows about. So we talked about looking after ourselves, and I talked about that earlier with the NHS. The single biggest killer of adults in this country, David, is
heart. Yeah.
Hearts, coronary heart disease. The British Heart Foundation estimate 75,000 heart attacks a year, 45,000 of those resulting in death through coronary heart disease. We know what causes it. It's in our diet mainly. Smoking and lack of exercise and too much drinking aggravates it, but it's mainly our diet. Got to cut down on your cholesterol to reduce that coronary heart disease. It's even reversible if you completely cut the cholesterol out of your diet. So, we don't have to be dying of coronary heart disease, but that's generally speaking what kills us. So with an adult that collapses, that's unconscious, if you check them, if they're not breathing normally, then it's probably going to be a heart attack. And, if starting those chest compressions early tends to be what saves people's lives, because what you do is you're pumping the blood around the body, keeping the brain alive until somebody turns up with the AED. It's the AED that actually saves their life. But if you don't keep the brain alive, the AED is not going to do any good. So you can all practice this at home if you're watching. If you take your hand, slide it up to your armpit and come straight across from the armpit, you'll find your chest plate there, your sternum right in the middle of your chest. That's where you want to put your hand. You lock your hands together, and then if you've seen the Vinnie Jones video for it, I'm sure you all have, hard and fast, and the only person I'm kissing is my missus. And so, because mouth to mouth, a lot of people are put off by doing mouth to mouth. They're worried about COVID or infections, and people's mouths can be filled with vomit and saliva. So, if you come on one of my first aid courses, I'll show you how to put face shields and things on. But if you just do chest compressions, anybody can do that. And the most common mistake people make is that they don't do anything at all because they're frightened about getting it wrong. If somebody's lying on their back, they're not breathing, they look dead, then start those chest compressions, because nobody has ever died of having chest compressions who didn't need them, right? Everybody's dead who needed chest compressions and didn't get them. That's the way to think about it. Because if you start chest compressions on somebody and they don't need them, they'll wake up and they'll give you a sign of life, okay? Because no harm done. So do those chest compressions, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, obviously calling for an ambulance first. And that will keep them alive until hopefully the ambulance service turn up, or somebody like myself as a first responder will turn up with an AED, which defib people call it, automated external defibrillator, that amazing machine with the pads. If you've got one of those, if use it as quickly as possible. If you're a business that's big enough to buy one and have it in your business, that's great. Otherwise, you do find them around, out and about now, don't you, in Sainsbury's and Tesco's and places, but they're really easy to use. You turn them on, they talk to you, they tell you what to do, so anybody can use them. You get the pads on as quickly as possible, and it is about speed. So if you can get the AED on in the first 3 minutes, then maybe you got possibly as good as a 70% chance of resuscitating somebody. But every minute that goes past, it's 10% less likely to work. So it is the early use of the AED that tends to save people's lives.
Yeah, let's just talk about AED, because people may have noticed these kind of yellow boxes strapped to walls around their community, village halls, supermarkets, other shops and places of access is where they tend to be. So they're visual. They're like I call them a little telephone box kind of idea, but they've got a lock pad on them. So if I didn't know any different, someone says, go and get the AED. Well, where do I go? It's over there on the co-op building or something like that. I run over there. What do I do? What's the typical process for getting an AED? And I know it talks to you, but we've got to get it first.
You have.
To the patient.
No, that's a really good question, David. Take your mobile phone with you is the answer, because on the side of the yellow box there's a little location code. So what you do is you dial 999, you tell the ambulance service the location code on the side of the box, and they will then tell you the PIN number to open the box. If it's one of the ambulance service ones, obviously you get them. Businesses have their own. The box might not be locked, but if it's an ambulance service one, there's a location code on the side. So when you dial 999, they will often tell you where the nearest AED is. If it's a suspected heart attack, so you can send somebody off to get that while you're doing the chest compressions. That's the ideal thing to do.
Yeah, I just don't know why we, as business owners, we're not almost forced to have one, right? I work from home, but there's no reason why I shouldn't have an AED to hand or in the car. We carry fire extinguishers in the car, or we have them in a building. We should have AEDs aplenty. It should almost be, someone's in trouble, no problem, there will be an AED around somewhere. Got a question, David, which hopefully you can clarify for me, right? So it sounds pretty scary. Someone's on their back, they look unconscious, okay? People are walking by because they don't want to get involved, because that's the British way. If I'm brave enough to say, right, I'm going to get stuck in, I'm going to do my best to help. Chest compressions, I get it. How hard do I need to press? I don't know the answer.
Okay. So on an adult, you're trying to get the chest to go down about 5 centimeters, no more than 6 centimeters, which is quite a long way. So it's about as hard as most people can do it. That's the ideal rate. So it's about a third of the depth for somebody's chest, but it's 5 to 6 centimeters on an adult. And you normally hear the ribs break. Unfortunately, it's not a very pleasant thing, but we can mend broken ribs. That's not a problem. We can't mend broken hearts. That's my favorite line from the training course, actually, if you come on one of my training courses. So yeah, hard and fast chest compressions. It's 120 beats a minute, which is sort of 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. And you're trying to go down about 5 centimeters, which is about sort of a credit card's thickness, isn't it? So it's a long way. But if you can't get it to go down that far, just go as far as you can. You're doing some good just by doing something. It's the main problem is people don't do anything at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So that I know we can't get a whole first aid training session. We're talking about if people are interested, how they can come along and maybe be involved in one of your training courses shortly as well. So that's kind of, saving a life through CPR. But the other big one you mentioned at the beginning is cuts and, severe bleeding as well. What should we do if we find ourselves in that situation? Because that could be quite common as well at home. You're cutting something, and you slip, or something happens. I've seen people try and open windows and put their wrist through and cut their wrist. These things happen when you least expect it. So if that was to happen to us, what? 999, yes, but what else can we do quickly?
So if it's that major bleeding with real, like a wrist where you have got an artery in your wrist, so major blood coming out there, the tourniquet is the best thing for that sort of thing. So you come about 5 centimeters back from the wrist and you find something about the thickness of a belt. So if you've got a first aid kit, you can take out a triangular bandage and just roll it up so it's about the thickness of a belt. You can use a belt. Not a leather belt doesn't work particularly well because you can't tighten it up, but a sort of any sort of material belt, not like a boot or a shoelace, but something sort of, a couple of centimeters thick, rolled up. Triangular bandage works really well, and then you tie that about 5 centimeters back from the wound, and then you can take anything strong and metal, so possibly not a pen, but something like this. You put it on top of the knot, you tie another knot over the top, and then you can turn this round. You see what I mean? And that tightens it up, forms a tourniquet. The way you can get a tourniquet wrong really is if you don't do it tight enough, because as you start to tighten it up, if you've ever played with a hose pipe, initially it comes out quicker and then you have to keep going until it stops. You need to really do it until it's tight and then tie it off. That will hopefully control the bleeding. And then as with all bleeding, you apply some pressure to it, put a clean sterile dressing on it and get them off to hospital as quickly as possible. But yeah, that catastrophic bleeding is something you do need to stop really, really quickly. I mean, the other sort of medical emergencies, there's obviously asthma. Sadly, 2 people a day die of asthma in the UK. So thinking about getting people have an asthma inhaler, took 1 puff every minute for 10 minutes. That can save a life if you can find somebody's asthma inhaler. Another one is anaphylactic shock that people suffer when they have a food allergy, difficulty breathing, swelling around the face, and people carry EpiPens. So on the first aid course, we have trainer EpiPens that we use to train people how to use those very quickly. Diabetic attacks are quite common now as well. So talking about, so there's lots of different sort of medical emergencies you learn on a first aid course. Yeah.
And David, feel free to say, I'm not answering this question, Nick. With all your skills, your knowledge, your experience, and being on the course, how often do you feel, or if you ever have, you think, thank goodness I know this stuff, because without a doubt, I've saved a life today?
Yes, certainly as the first responder, and through my work with the ambulance service, I guess being involved in, as I say, I was a management background, actually not a clinical background. So my medical experience is purely on the first aid side. So, I'm not a doctor or nurse, and hats off to those people and what they do. But through what I've been working in healthcare, about 22 times being involved in those life-saving situations. So a couple of those times it's been successful. So unfortunately, the majority of the time CPR isn't successful, and that's why prevention is much better than cure. Much better to look after ourselves, eat a healthy diet, watch out for smoking, drinking, get some exercise. Much better to look after yourselves, because when it all goes wrong, it's really difficult to put people back together. So that's why the point I was trying to make earlier about we've got to meet the NHS halfway by really looking after ourselves. Because it's, the stress the doctors and nurses go through, you can imagine trying to resuscitate people, in hospital, very stressful situations, very upsetting situations. I've had lots of staff in my office over the years very upset about unexpected deaths and things like that in the hospital. So it's a really difficult job.
Yeah. First aid training, why is it not free? Now I know the obvious answer is, well, someone's got to be paid to deliver it. But if you just think about it, and maybe this is me overthinking or simplifying, as Nick put it earlier, if we was to go into schools and give basic first aid training, just a few hours training, with each year group or each class, however it would be delivered. And that could be delivered by, government funds. So a pot of money is issued to people that can offer that first aid training. And I appreciate it's going to take a long while to get around the whole of the country, but, you'd have a program that rolls out, go into businesses, because first aid training is not the cheapest, But at the end of the day, how do you value life is the big issue. But lots of employers wouldn't probably spend the money. Only they do it because they're told to, because they have to have, a first aid trained person in the business, depending on the business style and size and stuff like that. Do you think it should be free? And I'm not saying you deliver it free.
No,
I'm saying
Yeah, come on, David, get out there and do it for nothing.
Yeah,
Come on.
absolutely. And I actually strongly disagree with you, David. I actually think that that's one of the problems with the NHS is the fact that it's free at the point of care, and what people get free, they don't value. So if you don't turn up for your doctor's appointment, so what? It didn't cost me anything. If I don't take the drugs the doctor gave me, so what? It didn't cost me anything. I'm a taxpayer. I demand this when I turn up for my NHS service. Because it's free, we abuse it. I think if we contributed a bit towards the NHS, let's say you turned up for your NHS appointment and you got a bill at the end of it and it said 80% paid for by the taxpayer and 20% you had to pay as an individual. You could have a sort of safety net for those people who couldn't afford that 20%. But what that would do, it would make people much more accountable. It would make people understand the value of healthcare, because most people have got no idea how much it actually really costs. But also, you'd have to go and get health insurance for that 20%, wouldn't you? And then there'd be an incentive to look after yourself as well, because the insurance company will say, oh, so you're telling me you smoke 60 cigarettes a day, you drink loads, you don't exercise, you're overweight, your health insurance premium is going to be a little bit higher than somebody that looks after themselves. And then we'd have a bit more personal accountability for health. So I don't think anything should be free, because I just don't think people value stuff for free. They just won't turn up courses and things because, it didn't cost them anything. So what?
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying, because free has no value in some cases. But I was going back to that, maybe that education.
I think that's a bit different. I mean, it's part of the school curriculum at the moment, and I have been to my local school here in Coggeshall. They invited me in, and we did a sort of with the school was great. I got them all to pretend to be blood vessels and run around the school assembly, and then I said, right, you're now having an asthma attack, and one of the kids was like a lungs, and we're saying, so there's less oxygen going to the blood vessels, and they're all running around. They had a great time. We did a little bit of basic CPR with them, because there has been stories of children saving their parents' life by dialing 999 and knowing what to do. So, I mean, education is free, and it should be part of the education in the syllabus. I think it already is, but it's probably just not prioritised with everything else that teachers have to do.
Sounds like a great course, and you also offer management courses, right? So I'm loving the sound of your first aid courses. I'm loving the idea that all the kids are running around all the blood vessels. I imagine your management courses are probably serious, but just as much fun. Is that right? Because as you said very early on, right, we don't train managers to be managers. We just promote them to a position of responsibility.
It's got to be fun, isn't it? I hate courses that are death by PowerPoint. I like it to be fun. I like to be practical. We like to talk about real life examples. I always find you get 10 people who run a training course, use those people in the room as well, because we've all got different life experiences. So we'll talk about something that's difficult in management. We'll talk about, I run a course a few weeks ago, I'm managing difficult staff, for example. Everybody's got a story, and they say, well, I worked with this individual and they would refuse to do this and refuse to do that. But, I didn't want to sack them because in other ways they were very good at their job. So how do I bring the best out of this individual? And you have a really good, interesting conversation as part of the training. When a training course has gone well, because I come away from it buzzing as well as the trainer, because you just get that sense that everybody enjoyed something. And I've achieved a bit of, if I can have a little plug, I've achieved a bit of a personal milestone. Is if across my social media sites, I've just achieved 100 5-star reviews for my training courses. So I'm really delighted for that. And considering COVID was in the middle of that, so I'd like to think my courses are fun and memorable, and that's certainly the feedback I'm getting.
Well, I can certainly vouch for that. I'm also coming on one of your training courses in January with some other small business owners that we got together. I'm looking really forward to that, because the stuff that I have done with you so far has been great. So I'm looking to spending a whole day with your comedy added in, saving a life as well. So look forward to that. I know time is running out, and I know you've got a meeting that you have to be on as well very, very shortly. So a couple of questions to kind of wrap up our conversation with you this morning. Firstly, we always ask anyone coming on the show, because we're compiling our book of top tips. What would be your one top tip? It doesn't have to be related to first aid training, or what one top tip would you share with our audience, our listeners, our viewers today? Or if you could go back in time, teach your younger self, what would that top tip be?
I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey and his his book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and his habit number 1 is be proactive. And I think that's the secret of life, is that, again, life's not rehearsal. You have to be proactive. You get out of it what you put in. If you want to do a lot in your life, then you have to turn up and get involved. So be proactive would be my top tip.
Yeah, life's not a rehearsal. Be proactive. I love that. That's fantastic. You never know, that might sneak into our book, our top 100 top tips. And finally, if people want to find out more about East Saxon Training, find out about the training courses you offer for their business, for them individually, how can they get in touch? I can help a little bit here.
Thank you. Yeah, you've put my website up. That's always a good place to start. There's plenty of contact details on there. Thanks, David. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Google Business. But yeah, if you just look for East Saxon Training, I don't think there's another one out there. So hopefully, if you find East Saxon Training, I think there's an East Saxon investment firm or something. But yeah,
that's not you.
That's not me. So you'll see my lovely picture on the website and all my contact details there. It'd be great to hear from some of your listeners.
Yeah, brilliant. If you listen to this just in an audible format, that's eastsaxontraining.com. You can go there, find out more, get in touch with David, find out about the training that he offers. David, it's been great having you here on the show this morning, just covering that basic first aid stuff, how we can save a life, and learning more about your business and how you're helping change people's lives as well. So thanks for being a superstar here today.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Nick. Been a pleasure talking to you both.
See you soon. Cheers, David. Bye-bye. Fabulous, Nick. So do you feel a bit more prepared now? Do you feel like if you got yourself in that scenario, you could maybe save someone's life, maybe a bit of CPR?
I'd like to think I'd have a go, right? I've done first aid training in the past, and I used to, when I was at school, I used to teach it, but I'm way past middle age. I never knew how hard a chest compression needed to be. I've seen it on the TV, right? It looks easy enough. And they always seem to come round, but I appreciate it's tough stuff, right? And I'd like to think I'll be brave enough to have a go. And I'm going to get myself an AED unit. I'm going to put a sign out the front here to say, I've got an AED unit, right? And let the neighbors know if someone's in trouble, I've got a unit.
Yeah.
Actually, before I state that, I don't know how much they are.
About £1,000, I think, something like that.
Well, the business needs to get hold of an AED, and so we can put it to good use. Yeah.
What happens in lots of places?
Best.
Just round where I am, the local cafe here is an independent. They got together with the community and the other little shops, and they got to fund some donations from the community, and they raised enough money to buy an AED, and then it's mounted on the shop, so they supply the electricity feed to it, and they kind of just make sure it's on a day-to-day basis maintained and stuff like that. Not that it needs any maintenance, but make sure it hasn't been used and stuff. So yeah, maybe that's something else you could do. Is look, anyone could speak, in their local community, in their neighbourhood, and see if they could kind of all club together to put an AED in an accessible place. It'd be great. I mean, look, I've done first aid absolutely for years. I let it lapse partly due to COVID. So I've my certification has lapsed, hence why I'm going to meet up with David in January and some other business owners and have my refresher and get back up to speed, because things are always being tweaked and changed. But I will say, I found it invaluable, in the past. I have the confidence that I know and I've stopped at many RTA traffic accidents and stuff like that, where you're right, Nick, most people drive on by. The amount I've stopped at over the years and just provided basic first aid training. I've never been in a position where I've had to do CPR. And I hope I will never have to be either, because that obviously is a very different scenario. But just that basic first aid training with falls, trips, broken bones, bleeds. A scenario, Nick, not that long ago, that I was in an event and someone happened to slip over and hurt themselves. It's that basics training that is so useful. Just to, in a way, it might not be saving a life, but it'll be making someone's life more comfortable and helping them get back to a speedy recovery as quick as possible. So yeah.
Phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. It's a joy and a pleasure to be able to speak to people that know great stuff and then share that to our lovely audience. So I'm looking forward to feedback saying, yeah, I listened to the show. I've been out there. I got stuck in. I had a go, and I may have saved a life. Brilliant. Yeah. So it's that time. It's that time in the morning, David, where we need to announce this week's Chatbox Champion of the Week. I'm very excited.
Here it is. So if you're tuning in, we've been running our Chatbox Champion of the Week now for about a couple of months, and we've had some great champions, including your mum, Nick, who was our Champion of the Week last week on her birthday as well. But this week, we have selected our Champions of the Week, and here it is.
Absolutely. Chatbox Champion of the Week is to the lovely NHS and everybody who works as part of that awesome establishment. And as David was saying, what a tough gig. Right? What a tough job. Right? We might moan and groan at it if we're not getting the best care in the world. We might sing their praises if we've had a superb experience, but they're doing the best they can. And it's a tough, tough job. So very, very worthy Chatbox Champions of the Week, the NHS and absolutely everybody who works for them.
Absolutely. Well done and congratulations. Well, that's it. We come to a close. Next week is our Christmas show, so do join in. Nick will be getting his balls out, putting some lights up, and we'll be having a bit of a fun, kind of getting everyone back together. Some of our friends of the show. We've got Jacob ready live on the show, playing some music for us. I wonder if he'll give us a kind of a wish you a Merry Christmas song or something like that. But he's going to be playing with some of his latest tracks. It's going to be fun. It's going to be energetic. We look forward to seeing you next Thursday morning from 8 o'clock. Until then, it's bye-bye from me.
Cheerio.